Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Regain Your Core with Novia Reid. The topic of today's video is let's create boundaries, not put up fences, right? And I think this conversation is so worthy to have because boundaries are worthy. Boundaries are so important and essential to our lives. Why? Because boundaries harness inner peace. Boundaries harness success. They harness healthy relationships. They harness wholeness. But sometimes in the process of really creating boundaries, we can be putting up fences instead, right? Now, how many of you have fences? Probably some of you, many of you, perhaps all of you, who knows? But really, we put up fences to really do what? To keep our privacy. We don't want our neighbors like coming into our yards anytime they want to. We want that if we're taking a shower or something, that nobody's seeing us, right? And then there are times we really put up fences because we may not want like creatures to come into our yards. So we have reasons. But one of the definitions of a fence is really it's a barrier. And it can be seen as probably to serve as really as a protector. But how this really applies to our lives is boundaries are meant to help us, not necessarily to keep things out. Boundaries are not meant to keep good things out or to keep us from healthy things. They're really to help us to nurture a really whole and fulfilled life. But sometimes in the process of really thinking that we're creating boundaries, we can be really putting up barriers instead. And barriers really keep good things out. It keeps good relationships away. It keeps good opportunities away. So I really thought it was really important to have a conversation about how we can begin to, or perhaps grow in creating boundaries and not putting up fences. And I really just want to share with you 3 keys on how we can all do that. The first thing is that we can do is to really ask ourselves, do I know what my values are? Do I know what my needs are? And values are really our core principles that really govern how we live, that governs our friendships, that governs our purposes, that governs our spiritual journeys if we find ourselves on one. And our needs are what do we need to be healthy? What do we need to be spiritually whole? What do we need to have thriving relationships and to thrive in our careers or our purposes? We really need to ask ourselves those questions, because if not, then if somebody enters our lives, then they can possibly easily mold us into what they desire, and we can be following what they want or expect of us when we don't know what our values are, when we don't know what our needs are. So that's really the first thing that's really important for us to really spend some time and evaluate. And this could be for anyone at any stage of life, because as we evolve, as we experience certain things, as we mature, then guess what? Sometimes our values change, right? We evolve. Our needs change as we change. So it's really important for us to sometimes just take a self-check and say, what are my needs now at this point in my life? Like, what are my values now? And that when we understand those things, then that can help us know what our boundaries are. Because really our boundaries come from that. Our boundaries come from our needs and from our values. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to really ask ourselves, what's the source? This idea that I'm coming up with to put up as a boundary, what's the source of it? For example, like I have this boundary unless it's an emergency. If I'm going to come in a relationship with someone, there's a certain time frame cutoff point. If you're of the opposite sex, or even if you're mostly if you're of the opposite sex, there's a certain time frame that, okay, you don't call me past like midnight, 11 o'clock. Unless it's an emergency or you're in a crisis. That's just a boundary I have. I believe it's just like a sign of respect, and I just that's something I wholeheartedly believe. Now, if it's coming from a place of fear where I'm saying, well, I don't want anybody calling me past a certain time because I think the person I'm with, they're going to get upset, or I think they're going to be mad at me, then that may be more of a offense or just not a boundary because of the source. I'm doing it from a place of fear. So what can help us know whether or not we're creating boundaries or whether or not we are putting up fences is what's the source. Is it really coming from a place of, this is what I truly believe, this is what I need, this is something I hold fast to? Or is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from a place of insecurity? Is it coming from a place of hurt or brokenness? When we can really have that conversation with ourselves and really tell the truth about the source, then that can help us really know whether or not we're creating boundaries or putting up fences. The third principle that we can all practice is to really ask ourselves, is this in alignment with the woman or man I'm trying to become? Is this in alignment with the purposes that I'm trying to pursue? Is this in alignment with the goals really that I have? Because boundaries lead us toward who we want to become. Boundaries lead us toward the relationships that we desire and want to cultivate. Boundaries lead to wholeness and inner peace and success. So if what we are creating, these ideas and principles that we're putting into place, are leading us away from the relationships we desire, the wholeness we desire, the peace we cultivate or want to cultivate, then there's a good chance that we may be putting up fences. So as I recap these 3 principles to help us, that we can use to create boundaries and not put up fences, it's really to ask ourselves, what are our values? What are our needs? To really be able to ask ourselves, what are my needs are in this current phase of my life? What are my values now in this moment or at this phase of my life? So that would be really question number 1. Now, question number 2 would be, really, is this alignment with my values? Is it in alignment with my needs? Is it leading me up to or away from the goal or purpose or vision or person that I want to become? And number 3, what's the source? Right? So let me know your thoughts on this video. Like it if you like it, share it if you loved it, and just leave me your comments on not just the conversation or the video, but on the topic itself. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next video, take care, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't as yet, and be sure to check out my website. I really mean it this time. Until next time, until the next video, take care.